been sold the idea that financial independence is all about some number on your account statement, or even worse, that you don't qualify because of where you started out. That's just not true. It's not about some well-kept secret of the wealthy. It's about finding the right information and knowing how to apply it. On the Get Ready for the Future show, we're answering your questions so you can start making real financial change today. The journey to true financial independence begins right here, and it starts with you.
From the 6th floor of 3 Financial Center in West Little Rock, Arkansas, this is the Get Ready for the Future show. Glad to have you along. My name is Scott Inman, along with GenWealth Financial Advisors co-founder John Shrewsbury, answering your questions again and helping people discover, protect, and share true financial independence. You know, I love in the open there, John, our announcer says you may have thought that financial independence was some secret of the wealthy. And the reality here is that's just not true. There will come a time where you will no longer be able to work. You'll no longer want to work. Your income is going to either stop or change. And you have the opportunity now, before that happens, to make decisions financially, invest wisely, so that you have income coming from your assets when that day comes. That's financial independence, and it means something different to different people.
Is there any bigger come on social media or anywhere of, I'm going to tell you the secrets?
Right.
Who equesters things into secrets? You know, who sequesters rather things into secrets? I don't have any idea who is the keeper of the secrets, but you know, that's just hype. That is all that is, Scott. Financial independence is something that is within reach of most Americans. Now, there are folks that can't get there because their income is just not going to allow them to do that, or their living standard is not going to allow them to do that. But for a vast majority of people, if they have the right knowledge and take the right steps, they can get there. It's not a certainty. Right. And the path may not always be clear, but the ability to be able to live without a job and a paycheck coming from an employer is financial independence. And a lot of people get there because we've got thousands of them here at GenWealth.
And it doesn't matter how old you are. You're never too old to start working on that plan for true financial independence. We've got a question about that a little bit later in the show as well. But here's what we do every week on the show. We answer your questions. We ask you to send them in to us. And you can do that by leaving a voicemail or sending a text message to the number 501-381-5228. It's 501-381-5228. Nothing out of bounds here. Anything that's on your mind about money, investing, retirement, we're going to get your question on the air if you send it to us. And we're going to dive right into question number 1 right now. This is from Peyton in Little Rock. I'm 42 and just recently got a significant raise. I'm already maxing out my match, and I've got a Roth IRA started. Should I contribute more to my employer plan or my Roth? Or is there something else entirely that I'm missing? Peyton, thanks for the question. Glad that you are putting money back. You know, we've said many times on this show, John, that the contribution rate, your personal contribution rate, matters more than your rate of return. Now let that sink in. Rate of return is important. You got to have those assets grow, but how much you're socking away, how much you're putting in there matters more than the rate of return. And Peyton's doing that. But the order, the sequence, or the prioritization, we will say, of where you are contributing can matter. So let's go over what is really just a basic rule of thumb for everyone, including Peyton here, John.
Absolutely. So he's doing exactly what he should be doing. He's getting the match on his 401k. The next step is to maximize the Roth IRA contribution. If you're contributing to a Roth IRA, then the maximum that you can contribute is $7,000. There may be a catch-up provision if you're over 50, but the Roth IRA needs to be maximized first, and then go back to your employer plan. Now, the other thing that I would say, Scott, is that what Peyton ought to do, and what most employers ought to do, is they ought to be looking at a Roth 401k option. A Roth 401k option allows for there to be post-tax contributions to the Roth plan, and then they get tax-free income when they actually retire. And there just can't be enough tax-free income. I've never seen anyone say, don't give me any tax-free income. That's not anything I want. Secure Act 2.0 allowed for after-tax matches for the Roth IRA. Now, most employers would like to deduct that match off of their Schedule C or whatever the case may be. And they wouldn't be able to do that. They would not be able to take that as a business expense. They would have to attribute that as taxable income to you. But I'm telling you that a Roth IRA is a magic bullet in retirement. It helps you, number one, pay less tax. Secondly, it helps you to pay less tax on your qualified money. Thirdly, it helps you pay less tax on Social Security. So I think there ought to be a big hue and cry from workers out there to their employer. If they don't have a Roth option, they ought to ask them for that Roth option. And if they get that Roth option, they ought to maximize it to its fullest potential. But I think that obviously if you have a Roth option, then maxing out your 401k plan is the right thing to do. If you have a traditional 401k plan, go and get the company match, go to the Roth option as far as your own IRA is concerned, and then go back to that pre-tax qualified plan at your employer to be able to take care of maxing out your 401k.
We did a quick search on the proliferation, if you will, of Roth components, Roth 401k opportunity, and it really has exploded. I was surprised to see this. 77% of employer plans, according to Investopedia, offer Roth 401k options. So that's great news for workers, because another thing to point out clearly here is the Roth 401k, when it comes to how much you can put into it, falls under the provision of the 401k contribution limits, not the Roth IRA. So it's very important to kind of point that out. So if you think about that, and Peyton's 42, so not eligible yet for catch-up contributions, but on the Roth IRA side, he would be able to get $7,000 annually into a Roth IRA. Now, if Peyton is married, and if you're listening and you're kind of applying this to you and you're married, you can also put $7,000 if you file a joint return. You can put $7,000 a year into a Roth IRA for your spouse, and your spouse does not have to be working for that to be eligible. So that's $14,000. That's good. But it's not as good, John, as the Roth 401k.
Yeah, absolutely. That Roth 401k can take you all the way up to the actual 401k limit. Mm-hmm. And so I think that makes a lot of sense. Now, you may be asking, well, what's all the deal about this Roth thing? Well, look, here. If you think about this analogy, you'll understand the Roth. Do you want to pay taxes on the seed that you plant for the tree, or do you want to pay taxes on all the apples that it produces? Obviously, you'd like to pay tax on the seed because that's a one-time thing, and that's what you're doing when you have your contributions taxed. All of the interest, all of the gain over that 20 or 30 years that you're going to work for employers, all of that builds up on a tax-free basis. And then when you get to retirement, you have the opportunity to mingle that 401k money, that Roth money, with your traditional money, your 401k money, and be able to create an income plan that is more tax advantaged than it would be without the Roth IRA.
Yeah. Now, here's where the Roth is not as clear in terms of how you balance your contributions. I would say that you always want to get money into the Roth if you can get money into the Roth, right? But it does matter when you weigh against your taxable income, because as we talked about with Peyton, going back to the traditional 401k after you've maxed out the Roth might make sense, because the advantage there is you're lowering your taxable income now. Now, Peyton's 42, so that tells us we have a couple of decades more than likely of tax-free growth. That means that Roth is really still the place to hang out. But then he tells us, John, that he recently got a significant raise. And that's where it matters too, right? Because we have a marginal tax rate in this country. So the more money you make, the upper end of your income is going to be taxed at a higher rate. So for people who are getting closer to retirement, we have no idea where Peyton's significant raise is going to land him. But generally, as you're in your 50s and you're in your highest earnings years, you may be paying upwards of 22, 24, 32% in federal income tax. So it might make sense to at least get a lot of tax deferral now by putting in pre-tax contributions, because in retirement, typically people live in a lower tax bracket. Now, the caveat there is we don't know what tax brackets are going to look like in your retirement in the coming years because they're likely going to go up. But it does matter as you get closer to retirement, have higher income, to have more of a balanced approach.
It does. And I think that as you think about this whole deal with the Roth and everything, one of the things you got to look out for is that if you are a relatively high income earner, you're going to be precluded from being able to contribute to a Roth IRA. Not the case for the Roth 401k. If you are employed at an employer that has a Roth 401k, these limits do not apply to you. But on the Roth IRA, if you're married and filing jointly, you can take a full Roth contribution for if you make under $230,000 a year, married and filing jointly. If you make between $230,000 and $240,000, you can make a partial Roth contribution. And if you make over $240,000 a year, you cannot make a Roth contribution to the Roth IRA. But if your employer, again, has that Roth 401k option, you can still fully participate.
Now, we've got to move on, but if you are a higher earner and you just heard that and thought, well, I guess I can't have a Roth IRA, that's not necessarily true either. There is something called a backdoor Roth, and we're not going to get into that on this show, but if you want to talk to your financial advisor or talk to us about a backdoor Roth and whether that could be right for you, all the particulars of that, we'd be glad to have a discussion there. You can call us toll-free, 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526, and you can call that number and set up an appointment with a GenWealth financial advisor, either over the phone or in person. We'd be glad to answer any questions you might have. All right, next up on the show, it's Sam from Fayetteville. I want to start a business in my retirement, but I don't really know where to start. What would you recommend for someone looking to start a business? And what are some protections I need in place to keep my retirement assets safe? Great questions there, Sam. So as you think about starting a business in retirement, I think the first thing from Sam's question that dawns on me is the why here. The why here matters because he seems like he's pretty open-ended. I don't really know where to start. I want to start a business, don't know really where I want to start. So I think I would ask these questions. Why are you wanting to start a business? Is it to fill your time because you're going to have a lot of time on your hands and you need something to do and this is more hobby related, maybe earning a little income on something you like to do? Or is it something you're specifically trying to create some part-time income to basically defer taking money from your assets for longer or defer taking as much money from your assets for a little bit longer period of time? So that kind of matters as far as the setup of this when determining, well, what I want to get out of this business before you really start thinking about what kind of business do I want to start. But John, in general, I think it's a wonderful idea to create extra income in retirement, especially in today's world where we have a gig economy. You know, you hear that thrown around all the time, but it's never been easier, really, without having to put up significant capital. You know, you think about business origins or the start of a business, you think of capital expenditures, and that's not necessarily true anymore.
Yeah, and you can get jump-started into a business, but I think, Scott, one of the things that you have to really focus on is to do something that you're good at and you know something about. You can't possibly make up a scenario where you can fail at business any quicker than doing something that you don't know anything about.
Right.
If you think, oh, I'm kind of interested in that, well, that may be the case, but if you don't know anything about it, I can assure you there are nuances to that business that are going to derail you in a quick heartbeat. Now, that doesn't mean you can't learn, but it doesn't mean also that you don't jump in the deep end of the pool not knowing how to swim. So I think that's the first thing. For this to be successful and not be a money pit, I think that you have to offer some type of service that delivers tremendous value. Here at GenWealth, as an example, we think we deliver tremendous value, the value of financial independence for folks. We enable that with people who come to see us. That is our value proposition. I think if Sam is thinking about a business, I think he has to ask himself, what is my value proposition, or what would my company's value proposition? And I think also you have to determine whether this is a real business or if it's a hobby. If it's a real business, then there's some hoops that I think you need to jump through. If it's a hobby, you can kind of do that on the sideline, do it on a Schedule C or something like that, and get a 1099 for it, cover all of the expenses and everything, and you'll be fine. But if it's a real business, Scott, then I think you've got to, first of all, protect yourself.
Yeah.
the first thing to do, in my mind, is to seek the advice of an attorney.
Yeah, so I think that's the key here, setting up some entity for your business, whether that is needed or not. An attorney, a CPA can kind of help you walk through that. But we're going to talk about some of the options. Again, this is not advice for Sam or for anybody listening. We are not CPAs or attorneys, but there are options out there. And really the LLC, Limited Liability Corporation, is the simplest, the most cost-effective if you're going to create a business entity. Now, as John has already mentioned, you can earn business income and not have to create anything. Be an independent contractor and get that 1099 and use the Schedule C to offset your expenses. But the LLC would be the next step in terms of creating a business entity. It's pretty simple to do. You go to your state licensing office there, and you're able to create one, pay a fee, and you have it. You have to go through a few more. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that. But again, seeking advice here matters. But if you do something in the advantage of having an LLC is the money that runs through that LLC is not you, right? It is not you personally. You are an owner of that. But anything that happens in that business will have its own. It'll have its own return that actually gets incorporated into your individual tax return. And then if you do something in your business that, let's say, causes a lawsuit, the LLC makes it harder for anybody to basically seize your personal assets through suing you. And that was part of Sam's question too, is how can you protect your assets in retirement? And then back to this retirement conversation as well, and the capital expense that may be associated with creating a business. I hope that Sam has done some retirement income planning to know whether he has additional assets available to invest into his business. Because I think sometimes too, if you haven't done that planning, you have all this savings. Maybe Sam's done a really good job. Let's say he's got $1 million that he saved up. And he's looking at that, and he's eyeing it, and he's going, man, I could just tear off a couple $100,000 here and start a business, right? But what does that do to your retirement should that business fail, struggle to get off the ground? You need to have done some retirement income planning first.
Yeah, and I would really caution against taking a chunk out just from the standpoint of the taxation on that. If it's qualified money, then you got to pay taxes on it, which reduces it by about 30% or so, maybe even more than that. And so you get into this real pickle by funding that business out of your retirement program. I think the retirement program has to be for retirement. It doesn't need to be to fund your business. Now, that being said, you can start up a business, as we said these days, fairly inexpensively and be able to actually make pretty good money. And I think the question that you've got to ask yourself, Sam, is this being done out of boredom or out of need? If it's out of boredom, then you can begin to stack up a lot of that money into tax deferred accounts like an SEP or even a defined benefit plan. If you make a lot of money, you can do a defined benefit plan, and that will shelter a significant part of the income that you make in that LLC. Now, if you are doing this because you need to supplement your income, or if you say, I'd like to not tap my retirement income sources right away, then that is a great way to prolong and to really improve your chances of having a successful retirement. Scott, I have a client right now that he retired from a corporation, went back to work as an independent contractor doing basically what he was doing with the corporation. He makes really good money in that sideline business that he created, and we are really not having to pull very much at all from his qualified assets because he has a really good income from the job that he created in his own company after he retired from the corporation that he used to work for.
Good question for Sam, and for anybody else listening, we're going to call this the question of the week. And Sam, for being the question of the week, we would love to send you a free Get Ready for the Future Show tumbler. Here it is right here. I'm sporting it on the set. Try to bring it every week. It's very nice. Very nice. We'll send it to you. All you have to do is send us an email to claim it. You can send it to show@getreadyforthefuture.com. And if you have questions for us, maybe your question would be named the question of the week. Just send them to us to the number 501-381-5228. Now, you can call and leave a voicemail, and we can use that voicemail on the air. You can also just shoot us a text. You can send the question via email to that same address that I just mentioned for Sam, show@getreadyforthefuture.com. We want to hear from you. We want to get your question on the air, and if yours is named the question of the week, we'll send you a Get Ready for the Future Show tumbler. Next up, it's Catherine from Bryant. I'm a widow in my 70s. My financial advisor wants me to invest 20% of my assets in annuities. Is that a good idea? Well, it depends, Catherine. I know that's the answer for many of these questions right off the bat, but there's just not enough information there for us to tell you other than to say an arbitrary percentage of your assets into an annuity is not the right idea. There has to be more to it than that. Why are you using an annuity? You may need one, you may not need one, but to arbitrarily, John, just say, I think you need 20% into your portfolio into an annuity is wrongheaded for sure.
Let me tell you what I think.
Yeah.
I think that 20% number just got pulled out of that financial advisor's ear.
Yeah.
I have no idea what the point of that is. If that is a rule of thumb, it is a big, dumb rule of thumb. 20%, it has no relevance to anything. I think the first thing that you have to ask is, okay, why would we be talking about an annuity in the first place? See, an annuity can produce income that you can't outlive. Does Catherine need income that she can't outlive? And if so, will 20% of her assets actually produce the amount of income that she needs? It may not. I have no idea where the 20% came from, but I think that is a valid question that you need to ask is what kind of income does Catherine need? And then maybe back into how much of her assets needs to go into an annuity contract. Secondly, let's talk about other things that an annuity can do. It can provide some downside risk protection on money that might otherwise be at risk in the market. So if Catherine is a person who needs growth, long-term growth of her assets, and when I say long-term, a minimum of 5 to 6 years or possibly even longer, but she is skittish of what may happen in the stock market and needs some downside protection, annuity contracts of all different flavors have the ability to give that downside protection. Now, thirdly, it could be that this is money that Catherine doesn't need for a long time, but she's 70, so I kind of doubt this. But the aspect of an annuity to provide tax deferral is an equation that you may want to talk about. Maybe not so much for Catherine because she is 70 and doesn't have a long time for that tax deferral to really benefit her. But the annuity contract question is much more than, I think you need 20% in an annuity. I think that smells more like somebody's trying to sell something as opposed to having a real reasoned basis for making a recommendation.
Yeah, when you walk through that and the checklist of why you might use an annuity, it just brings out the other point of this is when she says my financial advisor wants me to invest 20% in annuities, what kind of an annuity are we talking about, John? Because all those three reasons there can be found in very different flavors of annuities. There are variable annuities, there are indexed annuities, there are fixed annuities. So the annuity question needs to be answered through a planning process. And that's what we talk about all the time. It is not about selling an investment as a financial advisor. It is about creating a plan and then creating an investment strategy that helps you achieve the goals set forth in that plan. And that might be for Catherine a guaranteed income stream. Why would you need to use that? Well, we believe that your bills in retirement, your expenses in retirement, what we call required income, needs to be met with predictable, guaranteed monthly income. Social Security is a source of that for a lot of people. If Catherine is a widow in her 70s, she only has likely one check from Social Security there that can provide that. So is it enough for her? If she has $3,000 worth of bills and $2,000 coming from Social Security, then she has a $1,000 required income gap. Then an annuity might be the solution there, putting enough of her assets into an annuity that will guarantee that $1,000 of monthly income for the rest of her life. But if she has a $3,000 in guaranteed income sources already, then she has her required income needs met and would not need that annuity. So that's how the planning process dictates whether or not an annuity is needed.
Scott, every time annuity comes up, I think about people who go, I don't believe in annuities. Well, we're not talking about religion here. We're talking about a financial instrument.
That's right.
And you're really in a situation where you're burying your head in the sand if you just carte blanche say, I don't think I believe in annuities. Let's talk about why you would want to have an annuity. An annuity basically transfers whatever risk it is that you're trying to deal with, be it running out of money in retirement or the downside risk of the stock market. It transfers that risk to an insurance company. Transferring risk to insurance companies are things that we do every day. You do it with car insurance, you do it with homeowners insurance, you do it with life insurance, and you may want to do it as far as a financial instrument is concerned to protect your assets. That may be the right thing to do. Again, it may not be the right thing to do. It's very situational, very much depends on the circumstances that that particular person is trying to manage in their financial life. And that's the only way that you reach a legitimate recommendation for any money going into an annuity.
Well, and the other things you need to know about too, and there's a lot of them. First of all, never go into it without working through a financial advisor. I always come back to this, that they're, we talked about Secure 2.0, that the new law, the most recent law that affects your retirement earlier in the show. One of the things that it set forth too was the ability for 401k companies to offer annuities in retirement plans, in employer-sponsored retirement plans. Now you think about the cat out of the bag, or the way you call the Pandora's box that is involved with that, having people who are on their own making their 401k decisions, having the opportunity to purchase an annuity. Well, what if a 30-year-old goes, oh, well, hey, fixed rate of return there for 3%, that sounds pretty good, I'm going to buy that. May not be right for him. Probably wouldn't be in his 30s. He's more in a growth mindset. So going it alone here is not a good idea. You need to work with a financial advisor that's going to talk about a plan, not just sticking 20% arbitrarily into an annuity. And the other thing to be aware of, obviously, if you're going to get guarantees on anything, it's going to cost something. So there are fees associated with annuities, and there are surrender periods associated with annuities. That's very important to point out, too. So if Catherine had said, hey, my advisor wants me to put 90% of my assets in an annuity, we'd say, no, that's probably not a good idea, because you're not going to have liquidity there. You're going to need to have some of your assets be available for things that come up, because the surrender period basically means it's going to lock that amount that you put into the annuity up for the length of the term, whether it's 6 years, 7 years. And that's the ones that we work with mostly, 5, 6, 7 years. We've seen them come into our office that people actually own that are upward of 10, 15 years. And that's
20 years.
20 years.
I've actually seen 20 years.
And that's ridiculous.
Yeah, and let me say one other thing about this. An annuity contract is only as good as the insurance company behind it. Whatever the guarantee is they're offering, they have to have the financial wherewithal to back it up. So the claims paying ability of the insurance company is something that you have to examine, and that is where your financial advisor can come into play to help you to look at that, because we do tons of research on the annuity companies that we utilize here at GenWealth to make sure that, from all appearances, that we can see that they can have the capacity and the ability to back up the guarantees that they offer you.
We've got one more question before we get to it. I do want to tell you about next week's show. So we tell you to send in your financial questions, and nothing's out of bounds, anything you want to talk about, and that is true. But we are going to actually have a theme with our question and answers next week. On August 7th, the show is recorded on a week from today, August 7th. We have a special guest on the show. Estate planning attorney Chris Rippey will join us. And so if you've got estate planning questions, you've been thinking about a will, thinking about a trust, how does this all work? Do I need it? What goes into it? What can go into it? You can send a question in right now to us by calling or texting to 501-381-5228. Ask your question of Chris. He's going to be on the show answering your questions next week. You can also send an email to show@getreadyforthefuture.com, all about estate planning, next week on the Get Ready for the Future show. Okay, our final question comes from Greg. He wrote us an email and writes, I'm a single dad of 2 teenagers. I've been doing a better job the last few years actually trying to keep us on a budget and setting aside some money for things like college and retirement. But I'm still feeling a bit behind the ball. What's the best strategy for me to make sure I'm saving enough? You know the question is going to be answered with make a plan, and that's
Yep.
what it is. Making a plan matters here, setting some clear goals for college and for retirement, and really we need to start by prioritizing which of those are most important. And we would say across the board, retirement, financial independence should be prioritized ahead of college. Now, that's hard for some people to think about when you think about how much you love your kids, how much you don't want them to leave college with debt. That's all understandable. But here's the analogy, or here's the thing you need to know about it. It's not an analogy, it's a fact. If you prioritize your children's college ahead of your own retirement, and it is to the detriment of your financial independence, and you don't save enough for retirement, who's going to pay for you in retirement? Probably your kids, right? So it's not a selfish thing to say I'm going to put my retirement needs ahead of my kids' college needs. It's really thinking about the future, and that's what this is all about. The Get Ready for the Future show.
Yeah, and there is no do-over, and there's no student loans for
Yeah.
retirement. And there are student loans to get your kids through college. And sure, you don't want them necessarily saddled with that debt, but that is a whole lot better than you being saddled with them being saddled with you as a live-in person in their home because you didn't save enough money for retirement. Now, all that being said, just because you take out a student loan for your student doesn't mean that you can't take on the payment of that student loan and take care of that incrementally as time goes on while you're still also saving for retirement. But Scott, you make a very valid point about the whole idea of prioritizing retirement. Once you prioritize your retirement, then you have to ask about, what's your contribution rate and how are you investing those dollars? I think that is incredibly critical, that you have not only a good investment return, but maybe even more so that you have the knowledge and the understanding of how your investment plan works. I've seen throughout my 30 plus years in this industry, I've seen hard times come when the market is going down and people put the brakes on that contribution because they think, oh, it's going down. That's a bad investment. I know I don't need to invest in that. When in reality, that's a great time for them to be accumulating more shares of whatever fund they're going into, because it effectuates dollar cost averaging. It is something that you need to understand how it works so that you can stay the course through those times and you don't do something to blow up your plan and then divert and say, okay, that didn't work. I don't know what else to do, and just go, well, just forget it. Because I've seen people do that because they get frustrated because they don't have the knowledge. It is going back to the opening of the show, Scott. It is the information and the education that is necessary to actually make the plan work.
Yeah, so he asked, what's the best strategy for me to make sure I'm saving enough? We said make a plan. Here's how the plan would work. We would identify your current contribution rate. How you're investing those savings helps us make some assumptions about rates of return. What is your retirement age target? We don't know how old Greg here is. When do you want to retire? What age do you want to retire? We'd have a discussion about retirement income needs and wants, because it is an income number, not an asset number. And then we can start to back in to your contribution rate. Determine if you are saving enough to reach retirement age that you've chosen with enough income for your needs and wants. And that's really how we would begin to put that together. And if you'd like to do that, as we hear the final bell there in time for the final thoughts, you can walk through the GenWealth Ready to Retire process. Step one is to call us or send us an email and tell us you want to walk through it. Toll free 866-653-PLAN, 866-653-7526, or email us to show@getreadyforthefuture.com. John, time for your final thought.
My final thought, Scott, is literally it is about prioritization. We've talked about prioritization of Roth IRAs. We talked about prioritization of saving over and retirement over college education. Let's talk about the prioritization of your financial plan. I understand more than you probably really even know how busy people are. I'm incredibly busy as a business owner, a husband, a parent, a grandparent. Yeah, life is going full tilt. I will tell you that you have to stop at some point in time and say, okay, I'm going to take the time that's necessary to pull together my information, go and sit down with a financial advisor and begin working on my plan. If you don't have a written retirement plan, then your retirement is left to chance. And that means that your ability to sustain your standard of living is left to chance as you get older. Don't leave things to chance. There's a great opportunity for you to step in and create a retirement income plan that is customized for you by giving us a call here at GenWealth.
My final thought quickly, remember next week, August 7th on the live stream, we'll have special guest, estate planning attorney Chris Rippey on with us. So if you have estate planning questions, send them in. Call or text to 501-381-5228 or send an email to show@getreadyforthefuture.com. And that's all the time we have for this week's show. Good questions again this week. We love getting them here on the show, so keep sending them in, and we'll have 4 more we'll go through next week with Chris Rippey. Thanks for watching, listening, however you get the Get Ready for the Future show. See you next week.
The GenWealth financial team is available to you 24/7 at info@getreadyforthefuture.com or call our offices at 866-653-PLAN. That's 866-653-7526. You should personally consult a financial advisor before making any investment, and no strategy can assure success. Securities offered through LPL Financial. Member FINRA SIPC. Investment advice offered through Independent Advisor Alliance. Independent Advisor Alliance and GenWealth Financial Advisors are separate entities from LPL Financial.